today. Welcome to Rushcliffe Arena, and many thanks to Rushcliffe Borough Council for hosting us today. This is the 16th meeting of the EMCCA board, amazingly. And there are, of course, as usual, some recommendations for decision. And whilst formal voting arrangements are in place for those based on a simple majority with the mayor in the majority, in most cases, we want to continue as we have done for most of our time in existence, which is to do so on the basis of broad agreement and consensus. So can I just remind you that we will have, this is being live streamed, and so your attendance is accepting you may appear on it. Reminders about mobile phones being on silent mode, and also that when you're speaking, switch on the microphone. Good job, I follow my own notes. So there are no known fire alarms planned, and should there be one, emergency exits can be pointed out. So can I start with apologies for absence? I've received apologies from Kim Harper, from Councillor Dawn Justice, and I welcome Councillor Martin Wright, who is substituting for Councillor Justice today. We've also received apologies from Councillor Nagat Khan and being substituted by Councillor Ifadura today. So thank you very much. I'm not aware of any other apologies at this point. Can I ask, do we have any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of June. Can I just ask you to approve those board minutes as a correct record? Do so. Yes, thank you very much. Moving on then to the mayoral update. Well, exciting times that we are in, whatever your political point of view. Firstly, let's talk about the future shape of local government. And I know that there are a range of views in this room and outside it on the decisions that were announced last week. And it would be easy to say that the boundaries of councils are purely administrative without thinking about the strong social, cultural and economic links that bind places together. So I'm sympathetic to anyone who worries about this under the new arrangements. You are all leaders of your places because you care about them. And therefore, I would expect you to have very strong views about the decisions that get made about your places. As you know, I didn't take part in supporting or determining any specific option, simply setting out the principles of reorganisation that would impact the relationship with a combined authority. But now we know where we are, and I also know that we cannot spend the next 2 years on pause. So I will be as helpful to you as I possibly can. But I also expect that we continue to deliver those things, be they through EMCCA or your own authorities, that our residents deserve. Every one of us is here to serve the residents of our place or of our region. I want to thank all of you for responding so quickly to my call to action regarding the A38 and the A46. We've heard a lot about place first politics since it became clear that we're about to have a new Prime Minister imminently, I believe. But I must admit, I wasn't expecting to be tested quite so quickly on commitments to place above politics. But I think that the way forward for this region is to be very strong in the case that we make. And we do that best of all when we are united across not just political parties, but places, and indeed with our partners outside of politics. But today we will have a new Prime Minister, and this means we can start making the case as Team East Midlands for retaining the investment that was promised for our residents. But notwithstanding this, I support boosting investment into defence and have continued to use my time to support the sector in the Midlands. This includes at the Midlands Defence Procurement Conference, the latest Midlands Defence and Security Industry Council meeting, a defence event in Parliament last week, and a speaking slot at the East Midlands Defence and Security Cluster meeting that I went to in Nottingham just last week. I've also continued to visit businesses in the supply chain to ensure that our shared work on defence is sector-led, most recently seeing TextureJet in Ripley. You should also know that that was the first investment in the East Midlands made by Midlands Mindforge. And I congratulate all of you for backing that investment into Midlands Mindforge that we took some time ago as a board. It is starting to make those real investments that we talked about. You will also know that young people are one of my highest priorities in this region. When it comes to national work, few things have caught my attention more than the Milburn Review, which seeks to address the generational crisis that is economic inactivity in young people. And it was helpful that Alan Milburn hosted an event near East Midlands Airport as part of this work, which gave me and our Director of Skills, Phyllis Miller, a chance to contribute a regional perspective. I'm very clear, while this is an issue that spans public services, someone needs to take political ownership of this, and I believe it should be mayors. And I hope that our new Prime Minister hears that case as somebody who was making that case when he sat on the other side of the table fairly recently. The East Midlands will always be my favourite place to be. So when I travel to other places as part of this role, I want to make it count. And at the start of June, I was pleased to be part of an East Midlands focused programme at the UK Global R&D and Science Investment Summit in London, where we could elevate some of our most investable businesses and programmes, such as Infinity Park in Derby. We used the same event to launch from the local to global, a new framework for devolution and diplomacy. And this is something that I commissioned along with Mayor Richard Parker to recognise that as we see more regional mayors, and many of them engaging in foreign direct investment into their regions, but also taking trade missions abroad, actually it needs to be better connected with what government is doing, so that when we are engaging with overseas and opportunities for diplomacy, we know that mayors have a place in that broader role. So it's right that mayors should form international links, and this report will be part of helping us to do this in a way which is proportionate and properly resourced. And this won't always be about mayors travelling elsewhere, but it's also about welcoming delegations here to the East Midlands. And a couple of weeks ago, I was delighted to welcome a delegation from Japan who took up an invitation to visit that I made whilst I was in Japan. And when I went there last year, I made the case to the British Embassy that I wanted to see some of the tour operators who are taking their chance to come to the UK. And I wanted them to go beyond the usual routes of London, the Cotswolds, Edinburgh, and pretty much that's it. And I was telling them specifically about everything we have to offer, but particularly the opportunities in the Peak District in Chatsworth, the beautiful things that they could see there. And I'm really pleased that they decided to take up that invitation and come and visit us and see the amazing things across the Peak District. And our businesses and our partners in the visitor economy absolutely stepped up to show them the very best. And we've had some really positive feedback as a result. I've also been to the West Midlands for the Midlands Economic Summit, where Richard Parker and I were interviewed by a panel of young people about their priorities. And it's always good to hear from young people because they don't pull their punches, and they absolutely put you on the spot, as they did with myself and Richard. And finally, we've continued to work together to keep our region in view of the changing government. Another meeting of Team Derby has happened, and I've had meetings with several ministers, including the Chancellor, the Secretary of State for Transport, the Secretary of State for Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs, the last of whom came to the region to celebrate the 75th birthday of our national park. And again, we were in the spotlight because we have so many assets when it comes to the natural environment and to the wonderful Peak District and the National Park. I'm very pleased as ever to take any comments or questions on my report. I'll stop there. or questions. Thank you very much. So let's move then on to item 6, which is the provisional financial outturn, and I can invite Richard Williams, our Executive Director Resources, to come and introduce 2 reports within his remit. Richard.
Good morning, board. I can get this to work. So hopefully everyone can hear me at that volume. So
Richard, microphone.
Here we are. It's still loading up. Thank you. Can everyone hear me better now? Yeah. So anyway, good morning, board. There are 2 finance-related reports on the agenda today. The first looks back to 25-20 financial year just passed. We report the financial outturn for that year. And the second report provides an update on the budget set in January of this year for the 26-27 financial year. So the first report is around the financial outturn report for 25-26. The report provides an overview of the provisional position on both revenue and capital for 25-26 and provides an update on any significant variances to budget, following on from the regular monitoring reports the board receives during the financial year. We're asking board today to note the outturn position, approve the part year transport levy, and to agree several year-end technical accounting adjustments. So in terms of our overall financial performance, we're showing a revenue underspend of 1.4 million against the 25-26 revised budget of 164 million gross expenditure. So as you can see, a fairly minor underspend, mainly relates to underspends in staffing, consultancy and project related spend. Lots of detail, of course, in the report and its appendices. The outturn also includes the public transport contribution or transport levy for the part year 25-26. As colleagues will be aware, EMCCA took responsibility for public transport for 2 months of the financial year 25-26 because we transferred the service on the 1st of February. So that reflects the costs and therefore and the levy for that part year. The report also recommends the approval of a range of technical financial adjustments, which you'll be pleased to hear I won't go through in detail, but they include transfers to and from revenue and capital reserves, grants received in 25-26 for use in 26-27, including some additional capacity funding and funding for spatial development strategy development. Grant carry forwards where the full 25-26 grant was not spent in 25-26, and the reprofiling of the capital programme. The capital position is shown against the revised 25-26 budget. Total capital expenditure for the year was 193 million invested in the region. Capital funding of 65 million has been reprofiled for use in 26-27 and future years. Revenue reserves at the year end were 52.8 million, of which 39 million are earmarked for specific purposes in 26-27 and future years, including for transport and provision for new programmes and initiatives. The report also sets out the outturn for the Mayor's Office budget and our Treasury management performance for the year. Don't want it to go uncredited that the authority's draft statement of accounts, which are reflective of the numbers in this report, were published on the 30th of June of this year. So for the second year, the statutory publication deadline for draft accounts was met by EMCCA. And therefore, I want to extend huge credit to Nick and the finance team for this achievement. Thank you. I'll take questions.
Thank you.
First report.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions or comments on the first of the reports? Please proceed on to the
Recommendations to.
wonderful. We'll just take everything at the end.
Okay, well, I'll move to the second report. So the second report is the revised financial estimates for 26 and 27. So we're updating our revenue and capital budgets, which were approved by EMCCA board in January. And we're asking you today to approve those changes to the original revenue and capital budgets. The main changes to the revenue budget, which is shown in the report, and there is a reconciliation in the report, shows that we received additional grants income by government after the budget was set, including an uplift in capacity funding to 3 million from the original 1.7 million. A very welcome announcement last month of revenue support to support our brownfield housing pipeline development. And also confirmation of some grant funding that wasn't available and not confirmed at the time. We had to make an estimate. We've now confirmed the finalised confirmed figures. It also confirms the public sector contribution or transport levy for 26-27 at 53 million, and revised estimates for public transport operating costs at 80 million. That reflects that we're now public transport. This position is largely unchanged from January, but there are changes in the cost estimates as we've done more due diligence on the cost of operating the transport service since it transferred to us, and also EMCCA funding requirements from, for example, the bus grant and earmarked transport reserves. And due to the complexity of historic funding arrangements, there may still be some further movement in these figures, and any such changes will be reported in October. A revised profile of the capital programme, which will result in expenditure commitments of 254 million in 26-27. That's up from the actual investment of 193 million in 25-26. This is based on revised forecasts of expected expenditure in the year rather than the funding available or allocated. This is because since we presented the initial capital programme in January, a comprehensive exercise has been undertaken to more closely align the programme to commitments and expected delivery rather than reflecting the funding profile. This will provide a much more accurate means of monitoring the programme during the year. Of the main additions to the capital programme, the main one is the brownfield housing phase 3 capital allocation. This is noted, but expenditure will largely fall in 27, 28 and future years. There's a separate item on this on the agenda. The report also sets out changes to the forecast reserves position, reflecting the outturn position from the previous report, and known commitments of nearly 12 million from reserves in 26-27, including to support the public transport budget. Nearly there. The report identifies several in-year pressures that will be dealt with either through the revised budget or by using earmarked reserves. This includes the Tour de France FEM that is later on the agenda, and the potential costs that will arise from the public safety programme. That's the transfer of PCC and fire functions to EMCCA over the next year or two. Finally, the report sets out the proposed budget setting timetable for 27-28. Our draft budget for 27-28 and 5-year medium-term financial plan will be presented to the November board. Again, happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Richard. Any questions or comments? Councillor Peakford.
Great. Hi. Good morning. Just wanted to say thank you to the finance team, especially for your diligence in sharing it with our teams at the local council level. All of our officers are really comfortable with the reports and also understanding of the way that you've shifted the reporting and why. So that's all fed on. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just Takes back then for the first set of recommendations in respect of the outturn for 25-26. So happy to approve those recommendations. Thank you very much. And then on to the second of the papers, revising the financial estimates for 26-27. Happy to approve those recommendations. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
On to item 8 and invite Liz Miller, who is our Director of Skills and Employment, to come and introduce the Future Skills Infrastructure Programme. To you, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Board. This is one that I'm quite excited about. This paper sets out our approach to allocating the first skills capital that we've received here in EMCCA, and presents us with a significant opportunity to ensure that capital investment is totally aligned to our regional ambitions. The Skills and Employment Committee considered this at the meeting on the 3rd of July and fully endorsed all of the recommendations put forward today. I'm going to briefly outline the 3 funding streams that consist of make up this programme in the first instance. So the first is the Post-16 funding. And this funding has been provided by the Department for Education to create additional capacity in response to the projected 16 to 18 population growth. Funding conditions are quite explicit, and the types of institutions that are eligible to receive this funding are set out in the paper in front of you. We have engaged significantly with constituent authorities and all of the principals, the colleges. All are with the proposed approach to take forward this funding through a formula-based allocations methodology. The second part of the funding is around construction capital, and this comes in 2 elements, which comes up to circa £7 million. Again, we engaged extensively with all colleges and constituent authorities, and it has been agreed or proposed that the recommendation is that Derby College Group, who are the regional construction technical excellence college, should receive the construction-based funding, and then the remaining project-based funding should be again allocated by a formula funded position. All of the cases here are currently in development, so full business cases are being developed, and then once completed, they will go to the Chief Executive for final signing. And the third element in the paper is around the Local Growth Fund capital programme. That is currently at a lot earlier stage of development, and when we are ready to take this forward, designed with all the stakeholders within the region. So in summary, this is good news. It's additional almost £30 million into the skills infrastructure within the region, and I welcome comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fliss. I think this is a really exciting bit of news for us, and particularly for our providers and our young people, most of all across the region. Comments? Councillor Graves.
Thank you. Yes, it is a very exciting paper. Thank you for looking at this. I just have a few questions, which I'm sure you'll the answer just off the top of your head. So first of all, what concerns that we have in Derbyshire is the split between urban and rural areas. Can you explain how that funding will be distributed, and how can we ensure that Derbyshire gets its fair share of that funding? And the other question, which is slightly different, is that about employers. How can we monitor the demand and evidence the demand from employers?
Thank you, Councillor Graves. So in terms of the urban-rural split, when we take forward the allocations, all providers will be asked to complete a delivery plan. And so therefore that will have a number of considerations for us, of which urban-rural will be one of those. So that will be taken forward. In terms of making sure that everybody has appropriate allocations, I was very against making this a bidding war against our partners where we're seeking collaboration on other things. So therefore, this will be totally data-led and evidence-driven based on growth in population, growth in student numbers. And so I think it's by far the fairest way in making sure that it's distributed on needs.
What about the employers?
And in terms of the employers, so the LSIP, so Local Skills Improvement Plan, has just been published, and that is very much about how the employer voice is infiltrated through everything that we do. So we have the most up-to-date employer voice, but we always need to do more. And colleges, working with all of our employer representative bodies, also Business Advisory Board, we continue to make sure that employer voice is heard, but there's always more we can do.
Kat.
Tom? Felicia, you know that I do have a slight problem, not with you, but in how government doesn't give universities any of the capital funding that links to this skills regime, whereas actually I would argue in the north, particularly in North Derbyshire, we probably provide the highest number of skills with no capital. So I am really sensitive now that other colleges will step in and do that, because otherwise, because in a way it forces me to reduce my spend within that northern county, because I'm not going to get any of this capital now. Before, we used to be able to negotiate a little bit. So by accepting that we weren't on that list and not trying to challenge that, I do think it makes it a challenge for us to deliver out of Buxton as we do at the moment. But I've written to government to say, where's my funding going to come from to help in any of that? Because clearly we're seeing an increase in the number of those students coming to the University of Derby for a skills-based programme, but with no funding attached to it. So that's a challenge to me. So I still think we need to challenge back to government on everybody do it all in the same way. And I would have thought it's a regional focus now. We have a stronger opportunity. And I was late because I'm running the task and finish group for access and participation for government, and they overran today. And that is one of the areas we are now going to look at some of this funding, because what we can see is quite a lot of the colleges stay very local and they don't go into the smaller units. So we will be looking at this funding in a very different way as part of devolution, in terms of how I mean, clearly we don't know who's going to be the minister, and so we believe the same strategy will work, but in a devolved, it will be who's the best provider, because fundamentally, if you're still not serving, because there's a cost, one of our costs is buses in North Derbyshire, £700,000 the university pays. No college feels they can pay that, but we can't get students to study otherwise. So I still feel that this is not, I put my voice through Dave Petley, I'm sure, but I still feel that this hasn't challenged what was an old system. It's great to have the money, but I still think we need to look at how all people are getting served.
Yeah, did you want to come back in on that? I've got plenty of others.
Just briefly, I do agree with you. I think this is a first step in this coming to us as a region rather than being done at a national level. If we had full devolution of the capital, then that would give us more freedom, and I think that's something we can push for going forward. I hear you.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Matt. I've always got to be careful how I address you in case I've got a talk around the ear or for calling you madam. First of all, I'd just like to thank Fliss and all the team report they prepared. My one and only outing as chair of the Skills and Employment Board, we had what I would call a very lengthy, robust debate on this, and all the members raised various questions which we tried to answer. And at the end of that meeting, we fully endorsed this report, and I hope equally that all of us here today endorse this report. Thank you
very much. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I do welcome this report. Great report. I think that almost everybody would agree that we need to ensure that local people and young people especially are provided with the skills to make the most of the emerging opportunities that are coming across this region, which are fantastic for the whole of the region. I am a little bit concerned in the very north of Nottinghamshire, in Bassetlaw, that the college has cut provision for a lot of the practical skills, building skills. So I'm hoping that the EMCCA board will keep an eye on that to make sure that's available for young people and older people there. But I also think it's good to see that we're moving to more of a delegation process, so that in accordance, obviously, with the approved scheme of delegation, we can move a lot faster on these decisions. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Chair. Just, and no sort of some similar concerns to, as Kath mentioned, around sort of how it affects us in the north, and particularly with a number of our local residents going outside the borders of the region, sort of how we ensure sort of some equity in terms of that. One thing that sort of was a little note of alarm in a sense is the table in Index 1, you showing the national statistics population estimates. It shows particularly within the high peak patch that we're effectively nosediving on sort of the 16 to 17 age population. In terms of sort of some of the predictions on how the funding's sort of been divvied up across the patch, how much are you sort of basing it on those estimates? And is there any sense checking being done on those estimates to try and work out some of the factors why the numbers are falling by that much? Thanks.
So in terms of the allocations and the formula, that's still in development as part of the full business case. So it will look at number of, we'll look at funding previously received by colleges. It will look at increase in student numbers at institution. It will look into the population growth. So there'll be a number of different metrics that will help form that. So it won't just be based on pure population growth and how we take that forward. But in terms of looking into the actual data, in terms of, I haven't done the further investigation at this stage, but the full business case will take that forward.
Thank you. Kath, did you want to just come in?
Just on the demographic data, which is why it's nosediving in the high peak, is that we've got quite significant national data that shows the number of young people within that region is dramatically reduced. And I do think then it's about, you know, as a council, can you attract people to come that have younger people or not? But actually, as the demographic data, actually the whole of the region is much lower than large parts of the rest of the country, but the high peak in particular.
We have number 10 in the north, next over the border. There'll be a whole relocation of people want to live in the high peak, I'm sure.
Let's hope so.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
Thank you again for the report. Very thorough, and I enjoyed that. A couple of things I wanted to check though, especially on some of the things Kath mentioned. What happens if any of these capital projects are delayed? Do we, especially in some of these smaller providers, if that's where provisions come from, how do we mitigate that, any risk from that? Second, do we have a clear outcome on how we're going to measure these, how the outcomes are going to be measured? And thirdly, do we have sufficient internal capacity to deliver this?
I should have brought a pen with me. I think your three questions were first about sufficient internal capacity. I think so. In terms of, we are looking to utilise some of the existing resource we have across the wider combined authority to therefore make sure that allocations go out as soon as possible. I think we're actually ahead of a number of combined authorities in how far we've taken this forward, and we've concurrently been developing the full business case, so therefore we don't delay our colleges in taking this forward. We will be allocating full funds in September, so this won't be on a year-by-year scheme. So I hope we have until 2030 to spend the money, and so I hope that this will be taken forward If not, then that will be developed through more details of the scheme. I hope that given that this will be allocated in September, we should see funding spent, especially as this can be on equipment and not just buildings as well. So I think there will be some contingency there too. In terms of the metrics and how we take that forward, that is currently be developed. Sorry, it seems a bit of a catch-all, but it will be developed through the full business case process. As I've mentioned before, there isn't a national cost per output. And so that's something that we are having to develop as we go forward, because previously the Department for Education has not had a cost per output. So this is new space for us to develop and take forward.
Thank you. Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Additional £30 million is clearly very welcome. But Kath's point obviously points out that further devolution is really needed so that we can do this properly. And to her point about saying that we can't all do it in the same way, you know, in the cities in particular, but across the region, we do have the NEETs challenge, and it's higher challenge in the cities than the rest of the region. And colleges aren't necessarily the only tool in the box to be able to tackle that issue. And there are a lot of small providers that are doing great stuff, really amazing work in ensuring that young people are receiving some kind of education, vocational education and learning. So I'm just, it's my plea to ensure that the Local Growth Fund really focuses on the alternative methods of delivery, not just through the traditional colleges.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
Councillor Peatfield made one of my issues there sound much more reasonable than I would, but she's rather are smaller providers, and I think we also don't need to forget that a lot of comprehensives and academies provide an awful lot of post-16 education, and some of those academies are taking difficult decisions to close down and reduce their post-16 education because financially they can't afford it. I suppose the thing, again, I welcome the report. It's welcome indeed. I'm slightly concerned in the paragraph on 3.1, which begins, EMCCA is using this funding too. And the first bullet point is expand learning capacity where demand outstrips current provision. But my concern, and maybe my concern coming from an area in North Lincolnshire, particularly in a place like close to a place like Ollerton, actually we need to stimulate demand in places like that. There's a really low take for post-16 education in Ollerton, but I'm sure there's areas right across the region in a similar state. And I'm slightly concerned that this report kind of, I'm sure doesn't ignore it, but it probably needs to say that we need to find ways of stimulating and making sure that children or young people in those areas can access post-16 education, and the barriers to post-16 education are made smaller.
I hear your point. I think that this is very much targeted at college provision, and there's a lot more that we need to do in looking at how well, we know, don't we, from like the Mayor's introduction around the NEET figures, we have a lot more to do. This is just one element of how we take this forward.
Thank you. I'm going to move to the recommendations then. We've got recommendations to endorse the proposed approach establishing the future skills infrastructure as that single integrated investment framework. Note the approval of the final business cases as set out, and delegate authority to enter into and execute the grant funding as set out in papers. Happy to approve. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fliss. Can I now invite Alison Clark, the Director of Culture, Visitor and Sport, to come and join us and to introduce the report on the Tour de France Femme 2027, the Grand Départ. The Derbyshire stage, I think we believe, Councillor Gray, we were going to call it?
That's right.
Excellent. And we hope that that sticks. across other users of the terminology, rather than, I think they were talking at stage 2, but that's a bit bordering, because the exciting part is that it will be coming through Derbyshire, and that it will provide a huge opportunity to showcase this region, showcase our tourism, our visitor economy, but also leave lasting legacy within it. And as you'll know or may have seen, I've been promoting a summer of sports this summer, and I hope that we will be able to embed some of those activities as part of this work. So Alison, please take us through.
Great, thank you. Is this turned on?
You need to red light on the top of it. Press a button.
Thank you. Good start. Thank you. Right, it is turned on now. Yes, thank you. So this report asks board to approve progression of the Tour de France FOM project, apologies for the French pronunciation, with a total cost envelope of 2.4 million maximum, subject to completion of a full business case, including setting out spend in 26-27 and 27-28 as per recommendation C. So the Tour de France FOM is set to be the most attended and most watched free women's sporting event ever staged in this country. And stage 2, the Derbyshire stage, will run through over 100 kilometres and 3,000 metres of Derbyshire landscape, and is very much set to be the star of the show. It's likely to be broadcast to 190 countries and benefit from the 300% increase in social media engagement from the last event. And it's this profile that will drive some of the core benefits in the business case, putting the whole region in the spotlight, working through our Visit East Midlands partners to maximise the impact. The other key benefits are on local businesses, local accommodation, local tourism, and also crucially local pride, well-being, travel, especially for girls and young women. So we're working closely with colleagues in Derbyshire County Council, who have been absolutely brilliant, and once board is hopefully looking forward to working much more deeply with colleagues in High Peak, Derbyshire, and the Peak District National Park, which runs through, and also, of course, Derby, because Derby Arena is a key asset for any cycling in the region. And furthermore, this project is really one of the ways where we will build our work with Peak Partnership with colleagues in EMCCA and EMCCA, and that will both be at a strategic level, but then also working collectively to make a fantastic joined up, which will benefit the whole of the region. I'm happy to take any of the questions on that.
Councillor Graves.
Thank you very much for that. As you would expect, I think this is extremely exciting for Derbyshire. I think it's one of the most exciting things that people will notice from EMCCA, that has an input into such an exciting event. I'm expecting a lot of people to be engaged in this process, and I just wanted to thank you for all the work you're doing. I just wanted to say it's a really good event, and we should all celebrate it and maybe engage with it. I've already booked my hotel room up there, so there's some money going in there. One of the things that we need to be careful of, or not careful, what we need to be aware of is we need to understand how do we measure the success of the event. So I'd be interested into understanding how you would see that, so that we can have a legacy that we can say this is what we've contributed to.
Do you want to pick up?
Yeah, of course. No, that's a good point. And we will work through the key metrics as part of the case, but in short, they will be based around direct spend, and also be based around future visitation, because one of the kind of core impacts you see from races elsewhere is that the full benefit happens actually within year 2. So people will have seen the landscape, they'll have seen some of the places they want to come to, and then we'll start to see repeat visitation coming after that. The third is around supply chain. We'll also measure over the period. And then separately, we'll have social value and also health and wellbeing value. And even though they're not a formal part of the business case, they do bring in monetized benefits over time. So they'll be the sort of key areas we'll be monitoring with your team in Derbyshire as well.
It's really exciting. If you remember when we had the for Britain September 2024, which was Derby to Newark, going through 3 parts. I think the only bit that didn't go to was Nottingham on that occasion. And we know that the benefit was something like an extra 4 or 5 million, between 4 and 5 million into the local economy. So these things make a big difference. And hopefully we will have an even bigger legacy on this one, because we will be a bit more in the driving seat, or the riding seat of this one. Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Chair. I'd welcome this sort of with the majority of the 130 kilometres that it'll be within Derbyshire, being mainly within the High Peak. I think it provides a number of opportunities that we're going to make sure we do as much as we can to sort of utilise. I think particularly from the borough's perspective, sort of there's a whole host of opportunities in terms of sort of engaging with sort of leisure provider, in terms of sort of how we can try and link that up with some of the leisure provision that's already there, but sort of expand the benefits to try and get folk that may not be as active sort of out on some of those routes, but also some of the other trails that we've got that link to it. And I think it also provides an opportunity, if we can, for to link up some of those other trails to get that wider tourist benefit. And we're just going to exploit it as much as we can do. A number of years ago, when the Tour de France sort of entered Derbyshire for about 5 minutes, we managed to close off part of the borough and put on a big screen in the park, and there was a lot of enthusiasm for it back then. It's sort of going on just about every major road throughout the borough this time. I'm sure the engagement and involvement from the public will be even better. Thanks.
Thank you. Kath.
Finally, I was just going to volunteer the 3 universities, because I think it would be really good to do some research on this. And you've got your creative teams and like that civic piece, but I think it would be really good to have a plan of research that they undertook on terms of, does it increase the social engagement, or how could we? So I just think that would be something. I mean, if I let Rhiannon know, I think it would be something we should do and show that we could get increase in engagement, but also how do we make people fully aware of their ability to participate? So I think that would be quite a good project for the universities to think about, to do through the group that you already work with.
Yes, please. Take that off. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Barton.
Thank you. Well, congratulate Derbyshire. I was heavily involved in a start and a finish many years ago in Mansfield with the Tour of Britain. And it's how you engage with it. And if you get schools involved and businesses and communities, where lots of communities get involved, and the build up to it's key. The couple of weeks and months to it is key. And if you get everybody on board, it's a brilliant day. And your economy will get a lot out of it. We certainly did. It's just a shame that on this side of county we haven't got it, but good luck to you and all the best with it.
Councillor Peakfield.
Thank you. And yeah, it's really good to hear you mention the velodrome, the arena in Derby, because, although this won't be coming through the city necessarily, we'd love to be involved and supporting from the regional aspect. Obviously, we've got a lot of skills and experience, and when it comes to cycling in Derby, not least to mention Cycle Derby, which is an award-winning department of the council that actually is pledged to ensure that every child has learnt to ride a bike before leaving primary school. So, please do link into our expertise and the work that we do there, because we'd be happy to take it on the road.
Thank you. Can I therefore put to you the recommendations as set out in the paper? You're happy to approve those? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alison. We move on then to item 10, which is the complaints policy and process for EMCCA. And I'll hand over to Sanjit Salar, Director of Legal Governance and Compliance.
Thank you, Mayor. This report seeks to approve the EMCCA's complaints policy and process. The purpose of this policy is to provide a single, clear and consistent framework for handling complaints, service requests, inquiries and feedback across functions. It is designed to ensure that concerns are dealt with fairly, transparently, within a clear set of timescales, whilst also helping us to learn from issues raised and continuously improve our services. Speak up a bit there. Oh, okay. So, as you're aware, EMCCA has continued to mature as an organisation, and following the integration of public-facing transport function earlier this year, it's increasingly important that residents, customers and stakeholders have a clear route for raising concerns and receiving timely responses as well. Just to draw out a few major issues from the policy. So the policy seeks to establish a single corporate approach to customer contact. There are clear distinctions between what a service request and what a formal complaints. We're also introducing a two-stage process with defined and clear response times. There is a strong emphasis that runs through this policy on early resolution. We're using consistent methods of recording, monitoring and reporting so that we can learn from that feedback. And we're also aligning with Ombudsman expectations and recognition of sector good practice. The report also reflects some changes that have been introduced through the Data Use and Access Act, which includes separate and specific complaints routes for freedom of information and access request complaints. So those specifically have been into this policy and framework. But ultimately, this policy is about accountability, transparency, and ensuring people can raise concerns with confidence, while also providing EMCCA with the information and insight that it would need to improve services. I'm therefore pleased to recommend this report to board today, and would ask you to support the recommendation to adopt the policy.
Thank you, Sanjit. Any comments or questions on the paper and the complaints policy and process? Yes, Councillor McKeown.
Thanks, Jane. Just a comment around the transport element. Whilst I can appreciate sort of in a lot of cases we would be forwarding those complaints on, I think there's an important logging and at least keep an account of the number of complaints coming through, because I think that could help us getting a lot of complaints from one or two particular operators to identify wider problems before they become a problem. Thanks.
Absolutely noted. Any other comments? No. Are we happy to approve this complaints policy and process? Thank you very much. Let's move on then to item 11, which is the recommendations from committees. And again, invite Sanjit to take us through those reports.
Thank you, Mayor. This report brings forward recommendations from committees for consideration in accordance with the governance principles as set out in the Constitution. These recommendations have been considered by the relevant committees and are now presented to board for decision. So there are two recommendations before the board today. The first one is from the Transport Committee and arises from the committee's consideration of the future electric vehicle infrastructure across the East Midlands region. The committee considered the role EMCCA can play in providing strategic leadership for the regional charging network and supporting future investment in electronic vehicle infrastructure. So the committee recommends to board today to approve EMCCA formally taking on the strategic lead role for delivery of the regional D2N2 publicly accessible charge point network, and to approve the up to £1.3 million of LGDI capability funding to support that work. The second recommendation comes from the Skills and Employment Committee's consideration of the construction skills package. Members considered proposals designed to address construction sector skills shortages, increase training capacity and support delivery of government and regional priority. So the committee recommends today to board to approve the approach to allocating grant funding for further education providers based on eligible learner numbers, and to delegate authority to the Director of Strategy and Inclusive Growth in consultation with the Section 73 officer and monitoring officer to enter into and execute the necessary grant agreements for the construction industry placement scheme. So these recommendations, members, have already been scrutinised by the relevant committees and are now presented to board for approval. Therefore, happy to propose those recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions on those? You happy to approve those? Right, Councillor Graves.
Thank you. Again, the issue comes up about rurality, and we need to ensure that the rural areas are well served and appropriately served. I mean, we have situations where sometimes these are we realise they're in inappropriate places. So I hope that there's going to be some consultation with the local people and the local businesses to make sure that the places that are picked are the right areas. But the fundamental thing is we need to make sure the rural areas are well served, because at the moment there tends to be a grouping where might make the most money, whereas that's not actually serving whole community, particularly in rural areas.
Thank you. I assume you are referring specifically to the Transport Digital Connectivity Committee recommendations. And Councillor Barton, maybe you as chair would like to pick that up.
Those points was brought up at the Transport Committee. It was assured by officers it would go across country, and just like you said, it would be done in that sort of way. I'm sure it's here anyway, it confirmed that, but that would definitely brought up. We said it would be across the county, not just in and around the cities. Don't worry.
Absolutely, and very focused on the wider region and recognition that actually 2/3 of the population sit outside of the cities in this region. So it's very important that we think about those small towns, communities and rural areas. Are you happy to, everyone board happy to approve those recommendations? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 12, which is the Brownfield Housing Fund. I'm going to invite Edward Highfield, the Director of Place, to introduce the report. Can I just say that we do have an item in which is in exempt Appendix B on the Brownfield Housing Fund Programme Delivery Update. Should you wish to refer to anything in that appendix, please advise me, because we will need to go into a private session if you make references to anything in that. But otherwise, I'm going to hand over to Edward to take us through.
So, Brownfield Housing Fund is money that is given to EMCCA by central government to be able to grant fund housing schemes on previously developed land that can demonstrate a viability gap. So it's all about bringing forward new homes on former brownfield land that otherwise wouldn't be able to happen. Government provided us £16.8 million in round one and a further top up of £19.7 million in round two. So significant sums, critically on the condition that all projects were in contract by March 26 and on site by March 27. And that time pressure was the defining feature of rounds 1 and 2 of the fund. In order to manage the fund efficiently, decisions for rounds 1 and 2 were delegated by this board to the Mayor in consultation with the 4 constituent council leaders. And I'm back here today to seek to update those delegations primarily. With this money for rounds 1 and 2, we've been able to support 24 schemes, which are together expected to deliver 1,765 new homes, of which 40% will be affordable homes. And that 40% breaks down as 241 affordable rent, 217 social rent and 86 shared ownership. So whilst the Brownfield Housing Fund was not a specific affordable housing programme, we have been able to deliver a significant share of affordable units by working with local authority partners, housing associations and so on. We understand that delivery of the EMCCA programme stands up well against similar programmes elsewhere in the country. All of those contracts will now be closely monitored as they move into delivery, with a number of schemes already on site and under construction. And a full breakdown of individual projects is provided in the appendices. The confidential bit is that we've gone into more specific detail about developers and funding contributions in the private appendices for your information. So recommendation A in the report is to note the performance looking back and to note the performance of rounds 1 of the fund. The good news looking forward is that as a result of that strong performance in rounds 1 and 2, we have been awarded a further £57.2 million for a third round of the Brookfield Housing Fund for the next 4 years. The slight kicker is that a significant amount, about 28 million, is still required to be in contract by March 27. So we've got a short window to get a lot of schemes through and into contract again. And in MHCLG have been clear with us that the subsequent year's funding is dependent on positive performance in year 1. So the pressure is on, as it was in rounds 1 and 2, to find and deliver schemes that meet these tight timescales. However, significantly, this is a 4-year fund now, so it does present an opportunity for us to work with local partners, local authorities, housing associations over a longer period of time to help support schemes that you consider to be your local priority. And we need to work together to make them fit the fund. The issue of rurality has come up a number of times today. It does play into here as well. It's referenced in the report. From a pure programme management point of view, fewer larger schemes would be the most efficient way of delivering the 57 million. But I think we all recognise if we did just focus on fewer larger schemes, it wouldn't reflect the full diversity and geography of our region. So we are suggesting a balanced approach where we do try and find some larger schemes that could deliver units, deliver numbers quickly, but also that we do recognise the importance of smaller schemes. They can still be incredibly significant in local areas. So this isn't about just picking the bigger ones. This is absolutely about making sure we have a good geographic spread throughout the region. So recommendations B and C in the report then are to note the further £57.2 million funding for round 3 and to commence the process of working with all local partners to bring forward a pipeline of schemes for consideration. And that work is already well underway with local authority teams. And positively for round 3, as Richard has already mentioned in the finance report, MHCLG have made revenue funding available to EMCCA this time to cover the cost of administering the fund. This wasn't the case for rounds 1 and 2, so that means that the cost of administering the fund and the intensity of work required doesn't come at the cost of other housing and regeneration activity as it previously did. So that's very welcome. So then finally, recommendation D and E in the report seek to update the delegations required to make decisions of the fund effectively. They're designed to balance speed and efficiency on one hand, whilst also ensuring local leadership and involvement by continuing the approach from rounds 1 and 2 of a delegation to the Mayor in consultation with the 4 leaders of the constituent councils for schemes over 3 million in value and a delegation to the EMCCA Chief Executive for schemes of less than 3 million.
Thank you, Edward. And I think we're already starting to see the delivery, really exciting delivery on some of these schemes right across the region. And I've been to visit them and see the homes that are being built. But it's great that we've now got a much longer term pipeline and funding available, enable us to do much more. Any comments or questions? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mayor. Great report. It was a lot in there, but a couple of questions just to drill down to a few other things. Do we know how the proportionality, especially with Derbyshire for phase 1 and 2, and how that's been allocated or divvied out? The other thing is, do we know what might form part of phase 3 yet, or is that still something we're working towards because we're still in some time frame? And how does that fit the broader scheme across all the different constituencies within Derbyshire and how that hits their regeneration priorities?
So in terms of proportionality around 1 and 2, I don't have that information in front of me here, but the appendices have got a breakdown of all the individual schemes, so it should all be there in the pack. If there's more specific questions, I can pick it up offline. But I think it's fair to say that given the time pressure of getting things in contract by March 26, we were driven much more by what can we get into contract rather than more sort of strategic assessment of schemes, and that's big opportunity we have with round 3 is to be much less driven by what can spend and much more focused on what to be local priorities. So in terms of what might be in phase 3, that is too early to say, I think, but clearly what we want to do, we've come out to see each of the constituent councils and done workshops for non-constituent councils around what is your housing pipeline and how can we make this fund meet the pipeline rather than being just driven by what can hit the timescales. So we want to understand local priorities, we want to understand local housing priorities, and then we want to see out of that which ones can we try and make this fund fit best. And out of that, we're confident that we've got a strong pipeline emerging.
More, but on the other part, if I can.
On the exempt.
On the delegation part, when we were talking about, there was two parts you mentioned. So,
Okay, that's fine.
so happy with the delegations, makes sense in terms of moving forward. But what sort of reporting or etc. will come back, or safeguards we have in terms of decision making there?
Yeah, no, thank you. I should have mentioned that. So this fund was reported to the Land Committee, and Councillor Gilby could attest, we've had quite regular updates through to the Housing and Land Committee of progress. So I think we will report both on the monitoring and achievement of 2 and also on the development of round 3.
Thank you, Councillor Gilby.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. And can I say how delighted I am that you have been visiting these sites. One, of course, in Chesterfield, but you have been across the whole of the region, and that I know that because I've seen you on social media, and I've seen you on social media that young people actually use rather than people of the average range sat around this table, and that is really good news because it is giving young people a hope that they want to grow and stay in the region. There will be homes for them, and as Edward's mentioned, there has been a lot of pressure on us to deliver these original schemes quite quickly, and I'd like to congratulate the EMCCA staff, and including Barry Cummins, on that really hard work to get that money out of the door so that we can see building in progress. And what a great range of tenures for the homes that are being built. Just to let Councillor Reid know, Councillor Carol Ward is a member of the Housing and Land Board, so she has had access to a lot more information through that committee, so she can perhaps fill you in with the gaps as well. But like the Mayor herself and I really welcome the opportunity that this current scheme is 4 years, and it will provide us with more opportunity to continue to consult with colleagues in the local authority areas, but also key partners in the construction industry as well. And this links in nicely with the report that we took earlier on skills, and the fact that Derby College will be getting opportunities to increase their capacity. In the north of the county, we have the construction skills hub at Marsden Moor. So not only are we getting the opportunity to build more homes, we are ensuring that local people get the opportunity to benefit from the jobs that creates as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no further comments or questions, I invite you to support the recommendations that are ahead of us. Thank you very much. Excellent. That brings us, I do believe, to the end of our agenda in very efficient time and good spirits. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you at our next board meeting, which will be a little bit of time. It's early October, but obviously a huge amount of activity taking place over the next few months, either in that delivery or indeed there will be, I think there will still be these meetings in between. I look forward to no doubt seeing many of you at other engagements and events throughout the region. Thank you very much for your attendance today.
Thank you.
This meeting.